Welcome to Talking With, and for today I have the great pleasure of meeting Victor A. Young, a staple in Canada and the States on screens, stages, and he's here currently in Calgary in the Stage West Calgary production of Fiddler on the Roof, playing the role of Stage. So thanks so much for agreeing to meet with me today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, let's start at the beginning. You've got a long history here in Calgary.
Yeah, I do.
The playbill for the show actually mentions that your first appearance was at Balmoral School right here in Calgary.
Balmoral School, yeah, just north of 16th and I guess just close to Centre Street there. I lived in Calgary for 3 years when I was quite young. I was born north of Vegreville in a little town called Two Hills, Alberta. And was, I think, 7 or 8, I guess, when we moved here. Lived here 3 years and then moved to Vancouver and then eventually back to Toronto. But so I have, a good history, not only with Calgary but with Alberta, because it's my home province. And I've done a number of shows here. And in fact, when I was writing my bio this time, I thought, I'm trying to find something in connection with Calgary, because it feels like a second home to me. I've done a number of shows here. And I always feel familiar here because I did live here at one time, as young as I was. I do have good memories about it. And then I remembered, just by happenstance, that I had done this play called St. Boniface Brings Christmas to the Vikings. And it's a Christmas play at Belmont. I think I was either in grade 3 or 4. I think it was grade 3. I could be wrong about that. And so that was my first stage appearance here in Calgary, so I like to kind of bring that up when I can.
So without a doubt, you've been active at this for some time.
Oh, I've been at it for a while. I didn't. My plan wasn't to become an actor. I actually went to university studying psychology, and I sort of got sidetracked. I had performed. I mean, I'd done some stuff, but it was never an ambition for me to become a professional actor. At least not until it happened, kind of. My family is Ukrainian, and I did a lot of Ukrainian dancing, so that was kind of my performance base, and I carried that on into university and got involved in musicals because I was a dancer. I could dance, I could learn quickly, and that kind of rolled into more theater. And I took a theater course to kind of help me with the dancing because I was choreographing, and so I could learn something about staging, and I just kind of got sidetracked a bit.
Well, you're certainly impressing the audiences here with your vocal abilities.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's nice to hear. It's this role is a gift. I mean, it's really a gift to play it. And this show is a show I've always wanted to do. I've never done it. I auditioned at university for the show for Tevye, and I wasn't cast as Tevye because they thought that I was I moved too well at that time. I guess my dancing was coming through. And then I auditioned once more when they did it at Stratford, not the recent production, but about 10 or 15 years ago, and didn't get that one. So this probably is the only other time I've ever auditioned for it. So it's not like the opportunities have been there. And I know the show is done often, but it's just never been near me, or schedule-wise didn't work out. So it was a great pleasure, and it was quite exciting to be able to do this and to do it here.
Yes.
Because I do know people here, and I have family, in the Edmonton area who will come and see the show. And so I'm having a great time.
Well, I can see where the scheduling could have been a bit of a challenge. You've got an amazing run of theater, film, and TV credits on stage in roles as diverse as Rock of Ages, Annie, and Spamalot, on TV in shows like Murdoch Mysteries, Queer as Folk, and The Newsroom. And in films, you've starred alongside Shirley MacLaine and Mrs. Winterbourne.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I've had a decent career. I mean, like everybody else, you always want more, and there are always things you think, well, that could be better, that could be something a little different. And certainly the TV and film, I did more a number of years ago, because as I'm getting older, those roles are diminishing. Because if you watch TV today, you see the cast; they're all, in their early 20s or something. So the occasional roles for an older generation, there's certainly roles there, but generally they're going to actors whose primary work is TV or film, and mine is primarily stage. So I guess that's kind of evening out in that sense. And it's quite different. The film and TV is quite different from stage. And I love stage. Stage is kind of my home. I guess that's my, where I started. And I just love the interaction with the live audience, which is something so terrific with this show, because Tevye talks directly to the audience. And it's hard. I mean, it's really tough, because I also have a spotlight in my eyes, so I can't really see. And normally I don't really want to see an audience. I kind of look out and blur them out. I don't focus on people. But for this show, I want to be able to see them, because I'm talking directly to them and with the character. And I can't really do that because I can't see well enough. So that's its own kind of challenge. So I kind of have to imagine that it's happening, whether or not it's not. So you're the better judge of that than I am. But they seem to be responding well, and I love it. And as I said, it's a gift role. It's a very complex character. People know the story, but I mean, it's based on tradition and the change of not only social climate but political climate. And although it's set in 1905 in Russia or Ukraine, under Russian control at the time, it has a lot of contemporary resonance, I think, and certainly politically today. It's unbelievable. Situation's a little different, but essentially the same kind of tensions, and you just go, man, something's just never changed. So people can relate to it on many different levels.
Well, that's it. And as much as there's that thread of tradition, there's also the back even that far where the show is set. Times were changing, and people were being more demanding and requiring more out of their lives. So that was the challenge for Tevye.
Oh, absolutely. And the traditions, the things that had led them to where they were. I mean, okay, this family is very poor and they're industrial, all this kind of stuff. But they have a rich tradition, and they're very proud of what they have. And they understand the environment. I mean, there's no question that he knows exactly, he may not know exactly what's going on, but he understands the machinations that are in play. And so no one can predict maybe the outcome, but they're certainly aware of the tensions. And accepting. And when I say accepting of them, it doesn't mean that they just gave into it all the time. He talks about balance, that they found a Fiddler on the Roof. How do you keep your balance? And his balance is, of course, maintaining the tradition of his culture and his faith and family against the changing times, and also within a social and political context that wasn't very embracing, of the Jewish people. And although that shifted from decade to decade, I did some research on this, and I was quite surprised that there were times when Jews had this huge acceptance. Yiddish was actually once an official language for a short period of time in that area of the Ukraine. And there's all kinds of times when they were very accepted and embraced, and just as quickly removed. And not only removed, politically, but removed physically from the country, which is what happens in this play. And so, there's all kinds of stuff to latch onto, if you will, to make a good meal of it. So it's challenging, of course, to make it real and sensitive, and also believable and credible in the sense that this man actually moves from point A to Z at the end of Z at the end of the play, and that there's a logical progression to it, and still maintains some dignity and I think hope and kind of a look forward. In spite of all the negative stuff that is laid on them, they still come out of it with some sense of positivity and looking forward, and pretty remarkable. And it's, those are true stories.
Yes.
I know this is fictional, but it's based on really a lot of true events, and you just go, holy mackerel, I don't know how people did it, but they did.
It's interesting because you're here and it's the 50th anniversary of Fiddler, so it's one of those enduring, you've had an ability to kind of get into some newer theater and some of these traditional things like Annie and that. Do you have a fondness for some of the old classics?
Well, the old classics are classics because they work. So those I have a fondness for. But in any era there are good shows and there are bad shows, and there's everything in between. I don't really have a preference. My preference, and is pretty, I think, obvious, would be just a well-written piece. But there are a few shows like this around. I think that regardless of over 50 years, it's pretty remarkable that it still has resonance for people. And I think it's because the subject matter is, regardless of your culture, your faith, and any of that, the issues that are dealt with really transcend any particular group or whatever. Everybody can relate to it, whether it's a father dealing with his children or dealing with his wife, whether it's dealing with the political climate changing, whether it's dealing with any age and generational things. It's a lot of stuff to embrace, and I think there's something for people of all ages, and we have audiences here that are some quite young. I talk about young adults, but young adults. And it's quite surprising because I think of dinner theatre, a bit staid, an older generation, which probably is primarily. But we've had audiences of younger people who seem to embrace it just as easily. And I think, wow, that's pretty encouraging. Very encouraging. There was someone said to me years ago, I said, the thing about theatre, it's either 10 years ahead of its time or 10 years behind. And often both at the same time. And I think that's exactly what's happening here.
It's interesting, your resume, CV, it would be the envy of many people that are just breaking into the business, but I noticed that you've got a number of, as much as you've got some American credits, you're rubbing elbows with some pretty big name Canadians as well. Is that something you've seen change over the years, that there's more opportunities and people are able to make a better living of this?
Well, you know what, it's changed in both directions. It's gotten better, it's gotten worse, it's all of the above. Generally it's better. When I started out, there were few theaters. It was late 60s, early 70s, and there was a big explosion of regional theaters, and so a lot of theaters were established at that time, so there was a lot of work of a particular kind. There wasn't a lot of funding, but there was places to gain experience. I made the decision to stay in Canada as opposed to go elsewhere. I consciously stayed here, and I had opportunity to go to New York and stuff. And when I was able, I had contacts and stuff, but when I was able to actually do it, I realized I didn't want to go anymore. I kind of had lost that ambition. I did have it at one time, and I just lost it. But I had made the decision to stay in Canada because I thought, there are good teachers here, and we have our own stories to tell and I just wanted to be a part of that. I really did. I didn't want to go, I'm doing Fiddler, which isn't a Canadian story, but you still do work from other places. But I really I always wanted to do more Canadian work. But anyway, I've worked most of my career in Canada. I'm quite happy for it, and now. There's a huge theater community. There's a huge film community now that there wasn't at the time. There was a community, but it was very small. Part of that has to do with CBC dwindling, and movies have kind of taken over a bit. So I guess it's a mixed bag, But I'm happy to be where I am because I've had a decent career with it. So I don't want to take anything away from that. And I feel. I've arrived where I am because of everything I've done in the past, and if I changed anything back then, I wouldn't be here talking with you. I'd be somewhere else, and who knows where that would be. So this is okay.
As an actor with this sort of longevity, you have to bring so many talents to the table. This is a 2.5 month run. You immerse yourself into those characters, but it's the reality of Canada. You're traveling all across the country.
Sure.
What's your rock? What's your anchor that keeps you grounded and makes your life a little more stable?
Well, in a nutshell, I have a family. I have a wife and son who's 20. My wife's an actress. So we have a lot in common. Very supportive environment. My family's been very supportive of my work. That's been very helpful from the beginning. I think it's because I enjoy doing what I do love the work I'm doing. It's not always successful. It's not always the best thing on the block, but I certainly approach it honestly and with integrity. I like the creativity of it. I'm dealing with a lot of different characters and personalities, so it's really a study of human nature. And whether I'm in a show or not, I'm dealing with that every day normally, in interaction with people. So it's kind of an extension of that reality. And being able to apply it in a work situation is kind of neat because I don't have to go open a book to figure out how to do this, or get a manual to say, you got to put this in here, and then you can figure out for yourself how to create this character. And when it comes together, it doesn't always work as well as you'd like, but when it does come together, there's nothing like it. I like telling a story about people. I'm not a big opera fan. I don't know opera, but I have seen some opera. I've seen some brilliant opera, and I've seen some awful, terrible opera in places where it should have been great. I won't mention anything specific, but I thought, well, opera. It's, you know, when you see something that's done well, it's mind blowing. It's transforming. But if you see it not done well, you think it's the worst piece of crap you've ever seen. And the theater's like that. Any work is like that, but particularly creative work, because we're always being judged. You know, I'm always being judged. My performance, someone's judging it. Yeah. And I'm judging it myself often, as much as I try not to, but I do. And I think that just keeps things rolling. But certainly family keeps it, you know, the support at home keeps that happening. And just the enjoyment of the creative process of starting with words on a page and then having a reaction from an audience that is, on one hand, exactly what you want and expect from them, and then those times when it's totally different from what you expect, because that has its own, return.
Yeah.
Those are wonderful places to be. I think everybody should have that experience. I don't have to be actors, but I mean, if you can get that in other jobs, great. We're pretty lucky.
It is something, even to be on the receiving end as an audience, to see your reactions and having to try and make sure that you have the crowds on your side. Victor A. Young, who's here in Calgary for Stage West, new production of Fiddler on the Roof. Thanks so much for taking time between two shows today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.